This conference will now be recorded.
So I think yesterday we discussed about some of the basics, right? At high level, we discussed about the data types. Okay, so using data type, how we define a variable, and what are the naming conventions we need to follow while defining the variable. All those things we discussed, right? And also we started understanding about the assignment operator, arithmetic operators. So how we deal with the arithmetic assignment and relational operators. So basically the relational operator result in either true or false. If you want to do the comparisons, that time we go with the relational operator. Okay, so when you have multiple conditions, let's say have 3 or 4 or 5 different conditions. So you want, let's say, first two conditions, 1 and 2, or 3 and 4, something like that. If you want to combine multiple conditions, we use logical operators. Okay, in Apex, for AND, we use this symbol, and then for OR, this one, and for NOT, this one. By using this, we combine multiple conditions. Okay, so if you want to understand, so let's say condition 1, condition 2, maybe I'll say A, right? A is like one condition. Let's assume A is one condition, B is one condition. Okay, so when you have like this, right? B, and let's say A and B. That means this and this both conditions satisfy. How it works? Okay, and A or B. Okay, if any one of the conditions satisfy, how it works? Not of A, right? So A is like the true or false. Okay, so it result in reverse value. Okay, to get all the different combinations, in general, right? True. Here if I say T means it is true, right? So if A is true, B is false, right? So maybe in the same way, let's say here true, and let's say here I'm giving like this. Just we are trying to understand the different possible combinations, right? So if A condition and B condition, if both conditions both are true, right? So if both are true, so when we use AND, right? How this AND is going to work? Okay, that we are going to understand, right? AND means if both the conditions are true, then only finally it becomes true. If any one of the condition out of two conditions, whatever we are doing with the AND, if any one of the condition is false, the final result becomes false, right? It's like that. Okay, so like this, just understand that. Okay, end means all conditions should be satisfied. Then only the final result will be true. If any one of the condition is not satisfied, then it becomes false. Okay, so like that. Okay, so just understand that one. Okay, in the same way, A or B, right? R means if any one of the condition is true, the final result becomes true. If both are false, then only it becomes false. That's the R condition, right? So I'm using this true, right? So any one of the condition is true that time, right? True. Okay, so true. Both are false, then only it becomes false, right? Like that. Okay, and also not of A, right? Means reverse. Okay, let's say here A, if the result of the A is true, not of A means it becomes opposite, right? It becomes false. Right? Here also becomes false, right? Here true means here it false, right? And also here it is false means here it be reverse, reverse of that one. That is not. Okay, maybe I'm just showing with only two conditions like this. Can be A and B and C, or A and B or C, like that, right? So as soon as you know this understanding, if we have this understanding, the other things automatically we can understand. Okay, so these are the some of the logical operators. So let's maybe play with it and understand how it is going to work. Okay, for that, once you log into Salesforce, open developer console. In developer console, open execute anonymous window. So here, okay, let me take few values, maybe I'll say integer number 1 is equal to 100, number 2 is equal to 200. Okay, so let me take maybe system.debug. Okay, so here I want to take two conditions in such a way both conditions should be true, right? So I'll say number 2 is greater than number 1. That is true, right? The first, let's maybe play with the end, right? And I'm also checking number 2 is greater than 100. Both are true, right? This is true, this is true. The final result will become true. Okay, so while printing in the log, right, to print in a better way, okay, so I'm also the final result will be true because both conditions are satisfied, right? Before to that, I also want to print some content to show something meaningful here, right? So here I'm just for our understanding, right? I'll say true and true, right? I know that both will be true. Final result will be true, right? It will, while printing, it will print true. Okay, let's maybe, right, just click this and automatically it will open the log. Execute and see how it is printing. Okay, so this is a string. For the string, if you want to concatenate with something else like this, we give, okay, execute. Okay, so it's not working out like this. Maybe entire condition keep in some bracket to have the separation. Okay, so now if you see debug only, see, right, true and true, finally true. Okay, in the same way, I mean, this is just for our practice, right? Before to this, I'm adding different possible options, right? So when it is true and false, that time, okay, so this one should become false. Maybe I'll say 500. 200 is greater than 500. No, the second condition is false, and the result should be false. In the same way here, false and true, right? So here it should become false, right? I'll say less than, and then this est is keep 200 greater than 100. Yeah, true. Okay, so final result will be, we know that it is false. In the same way here, 200 less than 100, false, right? And the number 2 greater than 500, false. And if both are false, the final result also will be false, right? So let's execute and see. It's like that. Okay, for our practice, we can try to do that. In the same way here, instead of and, if you use or, right, the results will be different, right? So if you use or, right, yeah, this is only for printing purpose, right? The main thing is here. If you separate the conditions with or, the meaning is if any one of the condition is true, that time the final result will become true. Okay, so execute. So now here, what should happen? True, 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 because any one of the condition is true, finally it is true. If everything is false, then only it is false. Here, only the last one should be false. Okay, so execute and see. If you see, right, here, only if everything is false, then only it is false. Like that. Okay, just understand that one. Okay, so here just open and copy this one for our reference. I'm just keeping here. Okay, that's about the logical operator. So any questions on this, anyone? Before we start understanding about the conditional operators, any questions on this? The conditional statement, so as part of the conditional statement, we use these relational operators and logical operators to check for the condition. Okay, so the purpose of the conditional statement is to control. Sometimes we don't want to execute some of the statements based on some condition. Only if a specific condition satisfied, that time we want to execute some set of statements. So that time we go with the conditional statements. Okay, so the one of the easiest part is dealing with the if condition. Okay, we also have something called switch when. Okay, even though you don't know, you can manage everything with if. Okay, so first let's deal with the basic thing what we should know. Okay, so let's talk about the if conditions. Okay, so when I say if condition, there are different flavors of the if conditions. Okay, so we have simple if, means if the block of statements, right here, whatever the statements, 1 or 2 or 10, whatever statements are there, you keep here. Okay, so when these statements will be executed, the condition, whatever we give, if that is satisfied, right? This condition, so in this place, what we keep, so it can be, right? If you see, we use these relational operators, logical operators, and finally it gives the condition, right? So let's say this one, right? This is one of the condition, right? Based on this result, it can be true or false. If it is true, it will enter inside and it execute. If it is false, it won't enter inside. It's like that. So when you deal with those kind of situations, this one we call as simple if condition. Okay, so let's maybe understand how it is going to work. Okay, so here I'm just giving if, right? Condition, it can be a simple condition, right? Or multiple conditions like this. We can keep, right? So let's say here, if this condition is satisfied, so what I want to do here, I'm just printing system.debug. I'll say inside simple if. Okay, that is what it is showing. Inside simple if. Copy, right? So copy, just execute. Inside simple if, right? So like that, if this condition is satisfied, it's entering inside this and it is saying inside simple if. So one of the statement, right? So that's about that one. Okay, so just I'm copying that piece of logic and keeping here. This is simple if, right? So we also have if else, right? If the if condition is not satisfied, it enters into else. Okay, so we give some if condition. If this is not satisfied, it won't enter inside this block. It won't execute anything. Else, right? If is not satisfied, it enters into else and whatever the statements we keep here, those statements it will execute. Okay, that one we call as if else. Okay, maybe to understand again, go back here, right? So let's say here I'm simply checking number one is not equal to, I'll say equal to number two. That is false, right? It won't enter. Okay, so that time if this condition fails, that time it enters into else. So here for our understanding, I'm just keeping that here. I'm saying inside else, like that. I'm keeping, right? So just highlighting and executing. Click on debug only. If you see inside else, yeah, so that means it entered into this else condition, right? So like that. This is one of the example for if else. Okay, in the same way, we have else if. Yeah, that means we can check series of conditions one after other. Okay, if one condition is not satisfied, we check for one more, and if that is not satisfied, we check for one more, right? Like that. So that we call as else if, right? Like this, keep on. You can add multiple conditions that we call as else if. Okay, maybe to understand, right? Number one is equal to number two, no, right? So in between, again, I am checking one more condition. I am checking number two is greater than 500, right? Something like this, right? We know that number two is not greater than, right? Number two is 200, right? That is wrong. Here I am checking one more. Number two is greater than 100. Yes, right? To execute, right? So I'm checking one more condition. Number two is greater than 50, right? Yes, right? 200 greater than 50. So now like this, right? When you have like this, so when you execute, maybe this one we don't need for now. So now, what do you think is the result? Okay, when we start newly, okay, so the understanding of the people is different. Okay, so first it will check 100 is equal to 200. No, it won't enter. 200 greater than 500. No, it won't enter. Here, number two, 200 greater than 100. Yes, it enters inside. Right? It print it, right? So do you think it will also check this? 200 greater than 50. Yes, inside this, both will be printed. Only one of this will be printed. So what do you think, anyone?
Only one will be printed.
Both.
If it's
Yeah. So here we should know. Okay. So the thing is, initially people think both will be printed. So that is wrong. Okay. So the else if how it works, whichever is the first condition satisfied, it will enter inside that and it will ignore the remaining. It won't check the other conditions. If this is failed, then only system will check for this. If this is failed, then only system will check for this, right? If this is failed, then only it will check for this. So here in our case, this will be true. It enters inside and print it. It will stop checking for other conditions. Okay, that's what will happen. Okay, don't think that this one and this one both will be executed. Okay, let's execute and see. Click on debug only. If you see inside second else if, right? Only it entered into this one. Okay, so let me maybe paste this one here. Okay, the next thing, If series. Okay, that means all if conditions one after other. Okay, so let's say my requirement is even though this is satisfied or not satisfied, still there is a requirement to check for the next condition, whatever we keep, right? So how many conditions satisfied? In all those conditions, it should enter and execute those statements. So when you have such kind of requirement, that time what we do, we don't use else if, right? We just give if condition one after other. Okay, so if you give like this, now irrespective of, right, this if condition is satisfied or not, still it will check for this. If this is satisfied or not, still it will check for this, like that. Now if you execute, right, all series of if conditions, now if you see, it will be printing this, right, this two. Let's execute and see. You see it is printed, right? So that is if series, right? It's all based on the requirement. We decide we need to go with if series or we need to go with else if conditions. Okay, once you know these basics, so we decide as a developer. Okay, just I'm keeping that here. The next final thing is nested if, right? So that means inside one if condition, we keep one more if condition that we call as nested if. Okay, so I'm just keeping this inside that, right? Like that, keep on, you can keep. You can also keep if else and all those things. So inside if condition, again, if you use if, and inside that again you use if, like that, that we call as nested if. Okay, so this will be executed only if this condition is satisfied, right? So in this case, I think both will be satisfied. See, both will be, it enters into both, and you see both will be printed here. Both are printed here, right? So just copy, paste here, like this. Okay, so just understand this one. Okay, this is nested if. Okay, just know these basics. Okay, these are the conditional statements. So switch one, about that we see little later. Okay, so any questions on understanding this if conditions? Okay, the next one. Yeah, any questions?
Sir,
Yeah,
so can you please again repeat that?
repeat all these things, or you have a
Like
specific question?
only one thing, sir. Like, what is it? Just an example.
Yeah, so if the reason why we use if condition, okay, so in general, if you write some statement in the code, right? So line by line, first system start executing here, and after that it execute like that, right? But I want to control executing one of the statement based on a condition. If a
Okay.
specific condition satisfied, only that time the statement should execute. If the condition is not satisfied, the statement should not execute, right? So
Okay.
when you have like that, so that time we use this if conditions, right? If only if this condition is satisfied, it enters and it executes this statement. If this is not satisfied, right?
Hmm.
If you see number 200 greater than 1000, no.
Okay.
Now if you execute this, what will happen? It execute this, it will verify this condition. 200 greater than 100, no.
Okay.
It will skip executing this block of code. Okay, so now if you execute in the log, you don't see anything printing because it won't execute this, right?
Okay.
Conditionally, we are controlling whether two statements should execute or not. Okay.
Okay.
So for
Okay.
that we use, if you see nothing is printed now, this time it is not entered here. It's
Okay.
like that.
Okay,
Okay.
Senior. Thank you.
Yeah. So any other questions, anyone? Okay. The next thing is about the controlling statement, controlling or looping statement, right? So we have loops. The reason why we use loop to repeat the same statement execution multiple times. Right? Same statement, I want to execute 10 times, 100 times based on the requirement. If you want to repeat the same set of statements, logic repeatedly, so that time we go with the loops. Okay. So we also call as controlling statements. Okay, there are different types of loops we have in Apex. So one is while, do while, and for. Mostly we use for. Okay, but in for there are two flavors. Okay, so one is for loop. We will say index based for loop, and the other one is for each loop. Okay, we'll see all these things. Okay, so these things we don't use much, but still we should know. And these loops we use most of the times when we deal with Apex. Okay, so first let's see the syntax of the while, and slowly we also understand about the other loops. Okay, so the syntax wise, right? Syntax is like a grammar in English. Right here in Apex programming, the syntax for while loop, initialization. Right. So let's say uh, what is the initial value, those kind of things, right? Initialization, and after that while we give some condition. If that condition is satisfied, it enters inside and execute the statements, right? And also we need to use either increment or decrement operator. Okay, this is the skeleton. This is how we need to define the while loop. Okay, let me take the example so that you will understand. Okay, so now go back here. Now I'm saying integer. So in general, when we deal with the loops, okay, you see it's very common. You see in most of the programs, people starting with I. If there is a inner loop again, J, K, L, like that we follow. Yeah, that's the standard. Okay, so I'm just using I, and this is initialization. The initial value of the I is 0. Okay, so this part. Okay, after that while, right, condition. Here I am saying I greater than until I greater than 10, right? It will never satisfy it. Initial I is 0. We'll say I less than. Okay, so the meaning is until I value is less than 10, it will enter inside and execute, right? Let's say I'm just printing here system.debug. I'm printing that I value. Okay, and if you forget to use this increment or decrement, it's very, very dangerous. Okay, so if you see I is 0, 0 less than 10, it will print. Again, next iteration, 0 less than 10, again it will print. this condition will never fail, right? If you say I am executing, that condition will never fail. Infinite times it will try to enter and try to print that value, right? Infinite is not supported. Infinite means there is no ending, right? So that is not supported. Okay, so Salesforce internally they maintain some limits. Okay, we call those limits as governor limits. Okay, so you see some timeout exception, right? It's not that the code can execute at any amount of time. Okay, there is a maximum time limit to execute the code. If that limit is executed, Salesforce will throw an error. If you see you are seeing an error, system.limit exception, right? Apex CPU time limit exceeded, right? Because infinite, so it will, if it lives like this, it take infinite time, right? There is no ending for this. So just understand. So this one we call as exception. So slowly we have few topics, upcoming topics. We also understand error, exception, what is the difference, all those kind of things. Okay, so it's very dangerous. Here we have to increment. Right now, if you use like this, what will happen? Initially, I0 less than 10, print it, and it will increment the 0 value by 1. Right now, I value becomes 1, 1 less than 10, print it, again increment, it will become 2, 2 less than 10. Once I becomes 10, 10 less than 10, it fails, it will stop. Okay, you see it is printing 0 to 9. That's what you see. Okay, let's see that. So click on execute. If you see this time it is executed, and immediately we are seeing the log, right? If you see 0, 1, 2 until 9, so it's like that. Okay, just understand about that one. Okay, just I'm copying for our reference. I'm just keeping here. So this is the while loop. Okay, any questions on understanding this while loop? Anyone? So sometimes we can also do in reverse way, right? So I value is 10. Okay, so I want to reverse it. I want to print from 10 to 1, right? Say I is greater than 0. Until I is greater than 0, it should enter. Here I am decrementing. Okay, initially 10 greater than 0, yes, it enters 10. Decrement 9. 9 greater than 0. Once I becomes 0, 0 greater than 0, it fails. Right? You see, it will be printing 10 to 1. Okay, let's execute and see. Okay, 10 to 1, right? So it's like that. Okay, you need to play with all these things. Okay. Yeah. So now let's understand about this do while. Do while is also similar to while. One of the difference is when we deal with the do while, irrespective of the condition is satisfied or not satisfied, all the statements inside that loop will execute for one time. That is do while. Okay, so let's maybe check how do while works. Yeah, let me go back to the previous one. Like this I'm keeping. So now this is while loop, right? Let me also take do while and I'll show you the difference. Here integer, here I'm saying j equal to 0. So do, here I'm printing system.debug. I'm printing the j value, right? So while here we check for the condition, right? While j less than 10. Okay. So now what happens here? This also similar to this one only, right? This also gives the same result similar to while. In this situation, you don't see any difference. So if we execute for both, you see the same result. It prints 0 to 9. Second time also it prints 0 to 9. Okay. I think I think I forgot to include the increment decrement, right? Again, that is dangerous. Okay, I'm just adding that. So now execute. Okay. So here I supposed to use J, right? J. Yeah, this one. We need to deal with this. Execute, right? So now if you see 0 to 9, the second one is for that do while loop 0 to 9. When you see the difference, I'm keeping I value as 100 and a j value as 100 here. 100 less than 10, no, right? It cannot enter here. Nothing will be printed. But here, so irrespective of first it enters and execute all the statements. It will print 100 and it becomes 101. 101 less than 10, it fails. So one time all the statements inside the do while will be executed for sure. Okay, now you see execute 100, right? For the first one, here it did not print. Here due to this. If you want to differentiate, say do while like this and execute. If you see do while, it only executed that, right? So that is about the do while. Okay, so just understand that. So any questions on this? The next thing is about the for loop. Okay, so for loop, so this one and this one there is a difference. Index based for loop means based on the index. Okay, so for here only the initialization condition increment or decrement, all those things we keep here only. So here some statements. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so for that here for here only integer I equal to 0, I less than 10, I plus plus, right? So this is the initial value. Sorry, this is the initial value and the condition. And if the condition is satisfied, it enters inside execute and it will increment like that. Okay, so here how exactly it will execute, maybe show you. So the thing is, this will be executed only one time, right? So first time it check this condition. This condition is satisfied, it execute all these statements, right? And after that it will check this. It will increment that value by 1. Initially I value is 0, right? So it will increment and 1. Again it will check this condition. 1 less than 10, yes. Again it enters and execute this everything. And again it will increment, right? Like this. This part will be executed repeatedly. This initialization part, this will execute only one time. Okay, so like that. So just understand that one. That is how it works. Mostly we use this for loops. Okay, it's up to you. You can decide whatever you want. Okay, so that is, as a developer, we decide. If you feel for is good, we go with for. If you feel while is good, we go with while, like that. Okay, now I'm executing and you should see it is printing 0 to 9, right? So this is an example of the index based for loop. Okay, the next one is for each loop. What is this for each loop? Okay, so this also, when we deal with Apex, out of all these loops, the for each loop is the one 90% we use in most of the places once we start working. Okay, so for now here, to make you understand, there is a upcoming topic called collections. Okay, so for now still I did not explain, but I'll define one collection and try to show you how for each loop works. Okay, so in general, when you define a data type, right, and say integer, how many values you can store? When you say integer and some variable, how many numbers I can store? Only one. I want to store 10 numbers, 10 different numbers. So that time we have a concept called collection, list, set, map. Okay, so again, what is list, what is set, all those things we have to understand as part of the upcoming topic. For now, just to explain about this for each loop. Okay, so for now, don't bother about the syntax. Okay, so I'm just defining number list, something like this, right? For now, you don't need to bother about this syntax. Okay, as part of the collections topic, I'll explain in detail, right? 100, 300, or whatever some numbers I'm just giving, right? So this is a collection having multiple numbers, right? List of numbers are there. So if you want to iterate over this one, okay, so we use for each loop. Okay, so let me maybe execute here. This is list, and to iterate over that one, for each loop means, so right side, the collection, it can be list or set or map. As part of the collections topic, we discussed more about that. So right side, the collection name, right? Number list, that's the collection having all these numbers. So this collection of which type, is it integer or string or boolean, right? In general here, whatever type we mention that one, right? Left side we have to give that integer colon, and here we give some name when it picks each and every value, each and every element in that list. Okay, so what is the name for that element you want to give temporarily? Okay, here we give, I'm giving as num. So this can be anything like a variable we decide as a developer. Okay, so this should be the collection, and it will try to pick each and every value, right? We need to here mention as collection type and this some variable name. Now what will happen this one, first time in the iteration the value of num should be 100, second time 300, third time 50, fourth time this one, after fourth time nothing is there, right? After fourth time, fourth one, nothing is there. So it's like that. Okay, so just understand that. System.debug, number, right? Execute, we see 100, 300, 50. After that it is stopping, right? It will stop automatically. How many elements are there? Those many times it pick, sorry, it will pick each and every value and it will print. Okay, that's the for each loop. Okay, so for now this syntax, don't bother about that. I'll explain as part of the upcoming topic. Okay, so this is the collection, the for each loop. Okay, these are the loops we use. So any questions on understanding this? Mostly you need to know this and this. Okay, that's about the looping statements.
Srinu,
Yeah,
I think list is used to storing the multiple numbers.
not only number.
I
If you
mean,
want,
example. In this
yeah,
example,
yeah, in this example, yeah, number, yes.
I think so. We have array also, right? Using array also, we can store the multiple numbers.
Yeah. So here in Apex, mostly array and list works in same way. Okay.
Okay.
So array also similar to list. Okay. There is a slight difference. So as part of the collections topic, I'll explain. Okay.
Okay.
So you can just internally think that both array and list both are same. Almost both are same. Yeah, there is a slight difference. I'll explain that. Okay.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. So any other questions, anyone? The next type of statement, input output statement, right? So the thing is ultimately how this logic will be executed. There are different ways how the Apex code will be executed, whatever the code we write. Maybe someone open a web page and fill some data and click on calculate or submit. That time our logic should execute. Whatever someone provided as input, it take that and do the calculation, provide that value as output, right? So to hold that input output, okay, so what we do, so this mostly once we develop the UI, that time we'll understand more. Okay, so at this point of time, I cannot explain in detail about this. For now, what I recommend you to remember, in general, when you define a variable, and if you want to allow that variable value to be set from the UI screen or something, use set. Okay, so set is like input, and there is a variable in the Apex code, and you want to show that you want to show that value on the UI. Okay, so that time we go with get. Okay, so get is like output, set is for input. So in detail, when we reach that the UI logic, that time you understand more. Okay, so these are the different types of statements. In general, when you see some program, so these are the some of the statements you see, different categories of the statements. Okay, now what I'll do, I'll open some Apex programs. We'll see those programs and understand. So whatever we know, we are able to see those things in that code or not. Okay, let's see. And so for that, maybe let me open one of my website. Okay, so here I'm just going to open few of these programs. Okay, if you see here, this I think don't have more scope now. Here, this one. So for now, you don't need to bother about this, right? That is the next topic. What is that class and all those things. For now, see the statements inside that. Okay, do you know what is this? This is a memory statement, right? String, some name. This is a variable name, and this is the default value assigned to that, right? One more memory statement. So there are few variables having default values, right? We know these are memory statements. If you see this one, index based for loop, right? I equal to 0, I less than. This number can be, it will be supplied. It can be 10 or 20 or 30. I will show you going forward how we supply that. Okay, so those many times. If you see inside this, right, addition, they're using arithmetic operator, assigning that, right? This is arithmetic assignment, right? So like that, right? So whatever we discuss, you are seeing those kind of things here, right? One more example. If you see in this example, right? If you see here, this is a memory statement. Now here conditional statement, right? If, right? This condition or this is the logical operator, right? If any one of the condition is satisfied, this statement will execute like that, right? So this one, doing some calculations and printing that system.debug. If you see so far, all these things we discussed, right? So now that means we know so different statements, simple statements, how we write and execute and see the results. Right now, how we keep these statements as one single unit and call all these statements together whenever we want. So that we need to know. Okay, that's the next topic. Okay, how we organize all these statements into one place and keep on reuse that logic again and again. Okay, so that part we are going to discuss now. Okay, so to do that, we need to know a concept called OOPS concept, object oriented programming concept. Okay, so if you see Java, .NET, C++, all those languages are based on OOPS concepts, object oriented programming concepts. Apex is also based on that concept. Okay, so we are going to understand for Apex language what we need. So those things we understand as part of this OOPS concepts, and slowly we can start writing a program. Okay, object oriented programming. Right. So as part of the OOPS concepts, okay, maybe you see similar thing for Java, .NET everywhere, same concepts, but based on the language slightly you see something varied. Okay, so we have encapsulation, abstraction. So technically, without knowing this also, people work. Okay, if you know, it is better. Polymorphism and inheritance. Okay, so these are the OOPS concepts. Okay, so once you know these concepts, then we can start writing program and understand in a better way. So before we understand these concepts, okay, let's say assume that there is a program, right? The program, all the logic will be inside the flower brackets. Okay, inside the program, mostly at high level. So what we keep, what is the purpose of writing the program? We store some data, input data, output data, right? In a program to hold data, we have few statements. And also with the data, what should happen? Right? When you provide some data to program, what it will do, it will execute some logic, right? Let's say addition or a subtraction, or let's say EMI calculation, right? Based on the number of years and based on the total amount. So different types of things, right? So that kind of logic. When you deal with a program will have the data and also the actions, different types of actions. Some of the examples, addition, subtraction, like that, right? So technically, data, to hold data, so what we do, we define variables, right? The variables will hold the data, whatever we supply. Actions, in OOPS concepts, the reusable actions, right? Let's say addition, subtraction, those things we call as methods. Okay, so you see some variables, you see some methods inside a program. Variable is to hold the data, method is a reusable action, right? Each method will have some set of statements and you can call that again and again, number of times based on the requirement. Okay, so all these are the elements in a program, right? All these are the elements in a program, data specific, action specific elements. So just keep that in mind. Okay, at high level, these are the different elements you see in a program. Now, what is this encapsulation? and how we need to understand. Okay, these OOPS concepts are based on some real world things, right? On day to day, the real world what we deal to automate in a programmatic way. Okay, so in such a way, these OOPS concepts are designed. Okay, so here encapsulate means it will keep the elements together, right, in one unit. So that's encapsulation. Okay, so it keeps the elements in a program together. That is encapsulation. Maybe to understand, sorry. So let's take the example of TV, right? Let's say there is a TV, maybe 55 inches TV, something. So we see that TV has one single unit, right? But inside TV, right? If you open the TV, inside that you see many elements, TV, motherboard, and different chips, and many things will be there, right? So they are combining all those different elements, and finally one as a single unit you see the TV, and we see what we require, right? So we see only the TV monitor. We don't need to see the chips and whatever there inside the TV, right? They keep inside that only. So since people don't bother to see those things, those will be there inside only. Few things you need to go back to the TV, and if you want to keep some HDMI cable, something, so that visibility they keep in the TV, right? So the thing is, here also same thing. Okay, so we keep multiple elements in a program together, and which element should be exposed and which element should not be exposed. Those things we control as part of this encapsulation. Okay, so basically we achieve this encapsulation by using class and interface. Okay, so class and interface. Okay, so these are the two things. First, we understand about the class, right? So what is class? Okay, so the class is nothing but a plan. Okay, it's a plan. Or blueprint, right? Plan. Okay, so the meaning is when you say TV, right? So before manufacturing the TV, right, the engineers or whatever, so they have the design, right? So TV, so what are the different elements they need, how to assemble, and how it function. So initially that someone invents that, and they create a plan, and once after the research is successful, thousands of TVs will be manufactured by following that plan, right? The blueprint of the TV, right? So here also class, whatever the class we write, it is like we are planning. Okay, so class itself, it won't give anything, right? If you have the TV plan, that won't really generate the TV, right? By following the plan, by assembling all the different elements, finally there is a physical existence of the TV. By using the plan repeatedly, they can manufacture thousands of TVs. Right? Same thing. So let's say building. Before constructing the building, we take the plan from engineer, right? The plan on the paper is like a class. Okay, so in order to the object, right? I mean, the object means there is a concept called object. If you follow the plan and if the building is constructed, right, the physical existence of a building is like the object. Okay, so just understand. So once we start writing, you will understand. So we develop the class that is nothing but a plan. Okay, so we need to create the object for that class so that the plan and everything, however we plan in such a way, it will execute based on the data what we input as part of the object. Okay, that slowly you will understand once we start creating. So that's the class. Okay, so class itself, it won't do anything. Someone should call the class. I'll explain going forward the different ways how the class can be called and the logic of the class can be executed, right? So we'll see that going forward. So that's the class. Okay, so let's create it. Before creating, I also want to explain about this abstraction, and after that I'll show you how to create a basic class.
class
So
बोलता है.
yeah, so sorry, yeah, any questions? If you don't have any question, please stay on mute. Okay, if you have a question, you can ask. Okay, so abstraction. So abstraction decides the visibility of the elements in a program, right? It deals with the visibility elements in a program. So that's the abstraction. Okay, so the visibility, to control the visibility, we use access modifiers. We have private, protected, public, global, right? So these are the some of the access modifiers. By using these things, we control who can access which element in a program, right? So it's like that, right? Maybe to understand, maybe with day-to-day example, if you want to understand. Let's say we work for a company, right? In that company, we develop multiple classes based on different requirements. From which class to which class we can call, and what is the visibility, all those kind of things we control using this abstraction, right? Let's say when you work for a company, let's say just treat that company is like one, there is a gated community, right? It's like our company is like this, assume that it's a gated community, right? When you work for a company project, we develop multiple classes, right? In this gated community, let's say they have 5,500 apartments, right? So it's like each apartment is like one class, right? So the thing is, when there are these many apartments in this community, there is a shopping mall. Okay, the shopping mall, who can go to that shopping mall? Anyone, right? Anyone, even outside this community, some public people, so they can also enter into that shopping mall and use, right? So that is like global, right? So when you work for a company, even the other company, other applications also, so they can access. If you want to give such kind of visibility, we go with the global. Okay, so within the company only few things can be accessible. For example, within that community, there is a gym, there is a park, right? There is a swimming pool. Who can access? Only the people who are part of that one of the apartment in that community. They can use the common things. Right? Outside people, they cannot access. Right? That is like public. Protected means, let's say there is a 2 BHK apartment, right? So who can access that apartment? The owner of the apartment, right? Or if they have some friends or relatives, they can enter into that apartment, and mostly they can access hall, right? Hall and some places, right? It's like protected, only related friends and relatives, something. So such kind of visibility. Private. So mostly the bedroom and those things are private, right? So like that. Okay. So when we deal with the class, we decide which kind of accessibility we need to provide. So to control that, we have these things. Okay. So let's start writing a program so that you will understand. Okay, with this information, we can start writing a program. So let me write a program and see how it works. Okay, so we need to automate one of the real world. So instead of doing manually, that can be automated, right? So we are writing one of the first program. So once you log into Salesforce, there are different places where you can write the program. Okay, but the commonly all the programs what we create store in one of the database table called Apex class. Okay, so only the place where we navigate and create is different. But once you create a class, so that ultimately it stores in one of the database table called Apex class. Okay, so one of the way to create the Apex class, once you log into Salesforce, once you are in the setup area, left side, search for Apex class and click on Apex class. Okay, so from here, we can create. Okay, so for nothing is there. Click on new and start creating the class. Okay, the other place, already you know the developer console. This one here, file, new, Apex class, give the name of the class, and you can start creating. This is one of the other place. Okay, so other than these two places, we also use some third-party tools. Okay, that is not required, but to work for a huge code and some developers, they want to use some tools. Yeah, one of the tool called Visual Studio Code. Okay, so the Visual Studio Code, this tool is from Microsoft. And also there is a confusion, right? So from Microsoft, they have Visual Studio. Visual Studio is for the .NET development. So here the tool, whatever I open is Visual Studio Code, right? At the end, the code, Visual Studio Code. That's the software we need to use. Okay, so it's open source. I will also slowly explain how to install and how to connect this tool with Salesforce, our Salesforce organization where we are working, and do the development. Okay, so maybe first I'll create here some classes. I'll create here, and next I'll show how we use Visual Studio Code. And most of the times we work with this tool. Okay, if you don't like to work with this tool directly, you can work with the developer console. Yeah, so it's like that. Okay, so here let's first create here. We are creating our first class. So what you want to automate? So which kind of calculations you want to automate? It's all based on the requirement. Okay, let's say one of the requirement, there is a need to do the calculations for the area and the perimeter of a rectangle. Okay, so there are some shapes. Okay, so mostly the rectangle shape is there. Based on the length, based on the width. Okay, so what is the area of that rectangle? What is the perimeter of the rectangle? That should be calculated automatically without doing the manual calculation. Okay, so we are automating that. To automate that, first we need to plan. To plan, we create the Apex class. Right? So here, to start the class, in the first line of the program, we use class. The logic in the class we keep inside the flower brackets. Because we create multiple classes, each class should have some unique name to recognize. Right? We need to give the class name. Class name, saying a rectangle. I'm trying to see. Okay, save. If you see, it is throwing error. Okay, if the syntax, right, is not correct, you see the error. At the time of saving the program, whatever the errors we see, we call those things as compilation errors. Okay, there is a syntax problem. So one of the rule is the top level class. By clicking on new, either from here or developer console or from anywhere, the top level class should be having the visibility as either global or public, right? If you don't give anything, by default the visibility is private. That's the behavior. So here private means visibility within the same class. Protected means visibility within the same class and the related classes. Public means visibility from any class to any class within the same Salesforce org. Okay, that is public. Global means visibility of the elements in a class to the outside of the outside platforms, like not only Salesforce, outside Salesforce platform also from Java, .NET somewhere if they want to invoke. So we can expose using global. Okay, so when you write a program, okay, so when you develop a class, if you don't mention any access modifier, the default access modifier is private. The default access modifier is private. Okay, so just understand. So here public class name, right? Save. So like this is class. It is saved, right? Here some points, right? When you write the program, if you want to keep some comments, we use this slash. So one of the point is top level class should be either global or public, right? One more point, default access modifier is private. If you don't mention anything, by default it is private, right? So the logic we write tomorrow because we don't have time. Now if you see without any error, it is saved. If there is any error, the time program won't be saved unless we solve the syntax error and save it successfully. Okay, so this is the class, but still we need to work with the logic, so that we deal tomorrow. Okay, so any questions before ending with today? So we are done with the demo sessions. Okay, so from tomorrow, already if you are in the batch and already I think you paid the fee, it's fine. Whoever is not paid fee for development, whoever is joining newly, okay, so to attend from tomorrow, okay, so just you need to decide and you need to pay the fee. Okay, so before ending today, any questions, anyone?
Sir, share the recording, sir.
Yeah, already I'm sharing, right? Are you not getting?
Yeah, but getting after this class only you can send it, right?
After this class, the thing
Means,
is it needs time for conversion. So for us it is late night, right? So only morning I have to upload. It's like that. Okay,
means we'll get time to practice. For that purpose, I'm asking.
yeah, understood, but it needs conversion, and so because it is late night, so I have to upload in morning. It's like that.
Yeah, okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions before ending today? Okay, we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.